Welcome to Nigeria Decides Studio on the Trust Television Network. We have been bringing you activities and coverage from around the country in what appears to be a very interesting and epic battle, the 2023 Presidential and National Assembly election. The Presidential and National Assembly election is going on in all the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. We have our correspondents spread across all the states to give us live updates. My name is Sunday Michael Ogo, and I have in the studio with me.
Yes, it is absolutely amazing to be here and, of course, to give you the thick of the action right here as it unfolds on this momentous day. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
Interesting, Ibrahim. Journalists are like photographers. They are never seen in the picture.
Exactly.
You know, exactly. We walk behind the scene. But one thing I have done in nearly over a decade of reporting election is I was able to sneak in and get to vote this time, as you can see from my hand, just to have a complete feeler of what goes on there with the entire process, rather than just talking from what I'm observing.
How exactly was the process? I mean, well, you experienced it firsthand.
It was smooth. When I got to the polling unit at 8:30 a.m., the PO officers were already on ground, all set up. There were about 17 polling units in the place. I had done a transfer after moving around on account of this job. So I was waiting to see if there would be any hitch. It wasn't there. It was smooth for me, and within 5 minutes, I was done with the process to enable me move on to other.
But how was the movement like from home?
Now that was the crisis. On a different day, it would take me about 30-35 minutes. But it took me 3 hours, 30 minutes. That is with all the accreditations and the paraphernalia. I had to always show that I was accredited to move around and all of that.
So that was because of the deployment of security agents?
Well, it was massive. I saw about 3 different joint patrols. Then I saw the military police patrols, apparently checking on their own personnel who were deployed for the process. The only issue I had, coming down here was there should have been some sort of arrangement to allow for smooth movements of accredited personnel or what you call essential workers. We all got muddled up in that whole mess. Yes. So sorting that line out was...
well, a lot of people will say that's a necessary evil.
Well, I mean, you can endure that for one day or live with the consequence for four years, whichever one is easy.
All right. Well, it's actually amazing that you actually got the opportunity to vote and, of course, experience it firsthand. Talking about firsthand experiences, we have right here in the studio our guest to help us analyze some of these situations, who has actually voted as well. We have Emmanuel Osemeka right here in the studio, Public Affairs Analyst. Welcome to Nigeria Decides.
Good afternoon. Sorry.
It is afternoon. I mean, it has been an early day for a lot of people.
It has, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you were able to vote?
Yes, I was able to vote.
So how was the experience like?
Well, it's a mixed bag for me. I got to my polling unit at about a few minutes past 8 a.m. and I saw over 100 people already waiting. The INEC personnel were not there at the time. Then, of course, we began to organize ourselves. There's just one polling unit for my location. And we organized ourselves by giving numbers and all that. Not long, the INEC personnel came. When they arrived, there were 4 in number. When they arrived, they began to set up. And a few of us helped them to set up. And in the course of the setting up, we discovered they didn't have tables. They didn't have chairs for themselves. They didn't even have. Some of the elderly people within my locality came with their chairs. Some people had, but they refused to give it to the INEC people. So personally, I had to drive home to go get them tables and chairs from the house. And after that, of course, the normal ritual of sensitization took place, and of course, voting began. 2-3 people voted, and they discovered that the ink wasn't working. So we were stalled. So what we did was that we told them to continue the verification while once you verify, you just stay on a separate queue, and I had to send for ink from my own house
so
too.
Both accreditation and voting took place
simultaneously. It was supposed to be once your name is found on the register, you do the BVAS verification. Then of course you meet the PO to get the 3 ballot papers for presidential, senatorial, and of course House of Reps. Then of course you move to the booth to vote. So 2-3 people voted, and they started complaining that the ink wasn't showing, and so I had to go to the house to get another ink for them. So I practically had to provide materials that INEC was giving over 400 billion to provide, unfortunately, but they didn't give me any part of the money, unfortunately. Well, like you mentioned, it's part of what we have to go through to help ourselves. But it's been smooth so far. The BVAS verification really doesn't take any serious time, maybe barely 2 minutes or 3 minutes. But there were a few people who had issues. The BVAS couldn't verify. I don't know if it's exclusive to elderly people, because in my unit, quite a number, about 3 or 4 at the time before I left, had that challenge. They repeated, So I don't know if it's as a result of poor training or poor understanding of how to work the BVAS. But
you said that we are picking up some reports, we're monitoring reports, and in some places, in fact, we understand that the coppers were waiting for some kind of network before they could carry out verification.
Amazing.
What does that speak to?
Is it a failure of trading?
It purely speaks to failure of trading, because the BVAS does not need network for verification. The only time the BVAS needs network for verification is when you're sending the result. But because the BVAS is a device that all the registered persons, all the voters have been uploaded into. All you simply need to do is to push the numbers of each person. It will produce your detail, or you fingerprint, or the facial. So those are the 3 ways it works. But I mean, I've heard severally. When my mother called me, she was like, "Oh, that they said they didn't have network." Said, what network are you looking for BVAS?
Well, we do how INEC is taking note of all this, because if you have presiding officers, you have people that are supposed to be there, and these things has been going on for a very long time, and you actually made mention of the humongous sum of money that was actually given to INEC.
Over 400 billion.
So I mean, it doesn't speak well if the people actually aren't trained to do this, because these are I think they're rudimentary things that people ought to know, most especially people that are going to use this.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, talking about INEC and of course INEC facilities and training, we're going to be looking at the preparedness of INEC, how you were able to do that, and of course in the days leading up to the election, the days and months leading up to the election, how INEC was able to overcome some challenges, because there were lots of challenges to actually surmount. But coming back to you now, Emmanuel, we spoke about the BVAS and how things were organized. You were able to see how it was in your polling unit. You guys had to step in to do that. So how would you rate INEC's preparedness?
Well, before today, in all sincerity, I had, with the reports and of course the feedback coming from INEC and of course some of my colleagues out there who are working, it showed clearly that INEC showed serious sense of preparedness as against what we used to have in 2019, 2015, 2011, if we look at the recent past. But I mean, if you look at also how INEC was able to deploy materials, move the non-sensitive and sensitive material, as at yesterday by 6 p.m., practically 99.9% of the materials had gotten to RAC, which was fantastic. I mean, LGA, absolutely. And of course, RAC this morning. Unfortunately, this morning, the reports I'm getting across all my colleagues who are observing the election is that there's been this perennial logistical nightmare that INEC faces every election. We have the same today. So you look at some part of Lagos, there's this story that INEC officials are not arriving early. At 11 o'clock, they are yet to arrive in quite a number of the polling units. You go to the southeast, you have similar situation. In some of them, I checked some of my situation rooms here. It shows that some BVAS is not also working. So I believe that this was something INEC need to look at right now with a view to providing solution, because these are some of the things that we anticipated that you're going to have. So issue of BVAS not working, but I do not know how you're going to explain these current logistic issues that we're having.
Okay.
I don't know how, because this has been on from the days of Maurice Iwu to the days of Jega, and of course Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Unfortunately, it's been a perennial thing, and I don't know how they keep falling prey to this.
But how would you describe generally the voters' turnout and conduct, within the vicinity of the polling unit?
In 1999, fortunately, I was a polling officer for INEC. In 2003, I was supervising polling officer. I have not seen, and I observed the election in 2007, 2015, 2011, 2015, and 2019. I have not seen the level of enthusiasm, excitement, and of course, turnout that Nigerians have. Sometime in the past, if you get to polling units at 8 o'clock, you probably see 1 or 2 persons. 7 o'clock, if you go to any polling unit, you see minimum of 50. I think I'm being economical with
you. We saw some reports online even suggesting that some persons slept.
So, for this particular election, I think one of the things that has helped us as a nation is the fact that we have agreed to imbibe technology in our electioneering. And the BVAS is a game changer. And of course, the Electoral Act 2022 is also a major boost, because it has helped to make Nigerians understand that it is your vote that will decide, irrespective of what happens eventually. But the fact that it must give people that sense of hope that when they make those efforts, that effort will count somewhat. So that's part of the things I believe that is making people believe that if they come out, they will vote. And I believe INEC needs to do much more right now, because there's complaints left and right. This late arrival thing, they need to speak to it. INEC needs to be able to advise the polling officers on what to do for areas where...
Talking about that advice, shortly before we move on to other areas, we have seen some teething problems, that are surmountable.
Yes.
We've seen ballot snatching in a few places, disruption in a few places, and late arrival of materials,
Absolutely.
largely, as you have seen. If INEC were to take care of this thing, what from your experience, what are the things what kind of instruction are we supposed to be seeing from the INEC tables right now, going down to the polling?
So we'll take it one by one. So according to INEC guideline, wherever there's violence, ballot snatching, the election in that place will be cancelled.
Okay.
And of course, INEC could prepare for an election either the next day or they will announce the day. So if those places will be clearly ticked off, then two, where you have very late arrival of materials, most often what INEC does is, so long as the BVAS or card reader or whatever works, and the people are already there, the voting will probably go on till later hour, not 2:30. The idea is that voting will start by 8:30 when INEC staff would have arrived, then end by 2:30. But you know that the restriction of movement is still 6 p.m.
Exactly.
And it's deliberate. The idea is so you can have voting go on up till maybe 4 p.m. or what have you, to take care of whatever shortfalls they may encounter as a result of logistics. Yes, late arrival.
Yeah.
Then, of course, what was the other question you asked?
The issues regarding, you've taken it, late arrival of materials.
Then, in addition to, there are some reports we've gotten in some part of Lagos. I'm not sure how many polling units this happened, where the ballot paper, has some political party logos missing. You have for the presidential, you have the complete logos for the 18 political party in either the senatorial and the House of Reps. You have some political party logos not there.
All right, so let me just hold you there. We're actually receiving information that the INEC chairman is actually giving a brief right now, and we will join to be able to. Okay, all right. So once we are able to establish a link with that, we will bring you the briefing from the INEC chairman. So we're talking about the general conduct of the election. I mean, just like you said earlier, these are things that we've had over the previous elections. Always we've had this perennial problem of late arrival of materials and all that. After every election, I believe INEC sits down and says, okay, this is what has happened, this is what we need to do. Where does the problem lie? See, really?
Somebody made a joke I choose to call it a joke because I don't want to say the way the person said it. Somebody made a joke that professors usually are not the best, managers because of how they are trained. And I say, well, over time, we've seen a lot of professors who are excellent managers. And I don't know how well or how good it is to say that because we've consistently used professors. So starting from, I think it's Maurice Wu, that was the first professor. Before Maurice Wu was
Ebel
Gubadia. He wasn't a professor. Then, of course, Maurice Wu, then, of course, Professor Jega. Professor Jega did excellently well because it was from Professor Jega's era that we had the clean register. Then, of course, the introduction of the card reader, which was a major game changer that affected a sitting president. So that's why I use the word is a joke, the person is, because if one professor did very well and another professor appears not to have probably taken lessons from, so they do a lot of post-mortem, they do a lot of lesson learned conferences, and of course it is from those lesson learned that you have the suggestions that go into the Electoral Act, the amendment to Electoral Act, and of course the new guidelines and the rest of them. It is also from the post-mortem that you have INEC today now plan for elections a year before, 4 years beforehand. Unfortunately, what I think INEC is yet to solve is the fact that INEC relies 100% on the National Union of Road Transport Workers for the distribution of their materials, which is very poor. Yes, you can move your materials using the airlines and all that. That's fine. That will work. So if you got that right, what about the cascading it down? Why don't you have a more professional organization or professional company handle your logistics? Why use National Union of Road Transport? Maybe the excuse will be that the NURTW, understand terrain. So it might be easier for them to locate. But I say that doesn't make sense because for the materials to move from the INEC office to the polling unit, they go with police escort and they go with, and most those police are from the locality. So there's no way the police will not be able to identify. And now most polling unit is online real time. So you can put the coordinate, it will take you there. So I don't know what exactly is the challenge, but the major issue that I personally have identified is the fact that a lot of the vehicles are breaking down on the road. We're seeing the reports of that, that some from Enugu, tire burst, some engine, whatever. So you have material stranded on the road. So INEC needs to do more, much more.
That is quite unfortunate. Well, INEC needs to do more, and of course we'll examine that. This is still Nigeria Decides on Trust TV. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll continue the analysis right here on the Trust TV. Do stay with us.
Anywhere I see anybody, 1 naira. Please. The poor people are looking for money. It should not be used for vote.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let them go and put the money so that those who suffered for it can eat.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I wish you I'm not voting. I just want to do things. Hey! I'm not
Now, not still. Now. Try again.
Welcome back. It's still Nigeria Decides right here on Trust TV. So very good images there coming in from polling units and showing how the conduct of the election is ongoing. We're talking about things that are ongoing. We understand the INEC chairman is actually currently giving a briefing right now. So we're going to take a peep and listen to what he has to say, and then we'll be right back. Stay with us.
So if there are one or two questions or observations or suggestions, I would respond to the questions. Thank you very much.
Please, if you have any questions, by raising up your hands.
I report for arrest regarding polling units, especially the some persons having a heart to know what the commission is doing to address Nigerians, that no one would be the same.
Good afternoon, Chairman. You have acknowledged distribution of materials polling units, and their time has been taken off, the time beyond 2:30. And secondly, just report that Boko Haram terrorists launched an attack in Goza, Borno State. Some of your personnel were injured, including the electorate. Have you received any information and any action has been taken? Secondly, one of the vice presidential dates and the governor of a state went to their polling unit in Bos. As of 11 o'clock, your men were now on. So are you taking action regarding some of these issues? And AFAB Estate at Ako, as of 11:30, no materials. The same thing in Federal Housing Estate in Lube. Can you please respond to some of them all? Thank you. Okay, I crave your indulgence to respond to these issues quickly, so we go back to our situation room. The next briefing will be at 4:30. So let me start with Arise TV difficulty locating polling units. That is why before the election, we embarked on a campaign encouraging citizens to identify their polling units. We have 6.7 million citizens in that respect, and quite a number of them have done so. I actually expected that the complaints that we are going to receive from people who could not locate their polling units will be louder than that. We tried to solve a 25-year-old problem in the history of Nigeria by expanding voter access to polling units, which we successfully did in 2022. Before then, the delimitation of polling units was the one done by the old NECON, not INEC, in 1996. Doing so means redistributing some votes to polling units. The law empowers the Commission to create polling units and to allot voters to them. There is population increase, movement of people up and down country, and so we did so. But what we did in the main was to redistribute voters from congested polling units in approximate or same location. In other words, voters were not in the main taken out of the locations where they voted consistently since 1999. What did we do? We published the entire list of the redistributed voters and shared with the state offices. We worked with the mobile telecom network operators in Nigeria and sent bulk text messages to the affected Nigerians. We encourage our state offices to engage in publicity in the local language. And then we came up with two simple ways by which citizens could locate their polling units ahead of election day. One of which was our website. But the other one, which is simpler, is we provided two telephone numbers to which you can send a simple text message indicating your state, your surname, and the last 6 digits of your voter identification number, and you receive a message telling you that this is your polling unit. We appreciate that not all Nigerians have smartphones or access to the internet, and that's why when we send the list to the states, we ask them to engage with those voters that we may have redistributed to some of the polling units, and also engage in publicity in the local language. So these are some of the steps that we took. In fact, very interestingly, a friend of mine was very angry. We moved the person from one polling unit in Abuja to another polling unit. And he sent me a message to say that the commission has no powers under the law to do so. After all, how can you move me to a polling unit without my consent? Well, I quoted the section of the law. And I called him and said, why are you so angry? He said, no, I'm not angry. I said, please read the message carefully. We said you have been moved from a congested to a more convenient polling unit in the same premises. So otherwise you even don't have to walk long distance. Then he looked at the message and said, sorry, actually I didn't read the message. I thought you moved me to another town. So, but we have been to school, we should be able to read, and understand messages. So if there are Nigerians who are unfortunately still unable to locate their polling units, I apologize on behalf of the commission, but voting has not ended. You can send text message to the numbers that we have provided there on our social media platforms. They are also on the hard copies of the information we shared here early this week on the number of PVCs collected. And you in the media can help us before voting ends for people to know how they can locate their polling units and to vote on election day. Our intention was never to disenfranchise Nigerians, but to make it more convenient for Nigerians to vote easily. Unfortunately, some of the polling units are still congested, because when we contest some Nigerians, they prefer to be left in congested polling units, some for security considerations, that we feel more secure we have been voting, even if the units are congested, than taking us to a less populated polling unit, which may be some distance away from our comfort zones. So these are the steps that we have taken, and this is the rationale for voter redistribution. Mayor Gidi, I answered your question partially in my opening statement. I said that no Nigerian will be disenfranchised. Yes, we opened the polling late, and we admitted in some cases the polling units were opened late. But the system has an automatic mechanism for recovery time. We don't start 8:30 and close 2:30 on the dot. If we start less than 8:30, whoever is due before 2:30 will vote, no matter how long it takes. So no Nigerian will be disenfranchised on that, provided that person is at the polling unit before 2:30. You talked about one of the presidential candidates unable to vote in Maiduguri Metropolitan Council. We are following the challenges we have in 2 locations in Borno State, Maiduguri Metropolitan Council and Jiri. So we are in that. Voting hasn't ended. We are sure we'll overcome whatever challenges, and every Nigerian will have the opportunity to vote. Then finally talked about the attack of our officials in Goza, tracking that one as well. There are some, bandits or some sergeants that were fired from the mountain top in Goza, just firing at random. That was what we were tracking. We had to come to brief you. So continue to track. 4:30, we should be in a position further update on that. Thank you very much. The work continues. See you 4:30.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
That's the brief from the INEC chairman. They are giving situation reports across the country following incidences that are tripped in from the early part of today's activity. He talked on a number of issues. He talked about attacks here and there. I mean, his last words before we cut off had to do with a developing attack around Goza. If you are familiar with the training activities of the Nigerian police and the mobile police force, Goza area used to be where they have a shooting range, I think, for a long time. And he talked about late arrival of voting materials in some polling units and how they have automatic mechanisms to take care of this. He promises to return at 4:30, but we still have our guest in the studio with us to look at some of the issues that were raised by the INEC chairman. You listened to him respond to some of the issues. Some of them I noticed that you were nodding in disagreement.
Yes.
And in fact, you had to say we cannot basically just explain everything away.
Yes.
What do you make of the whole explanation around, especially the reassignment of voters, people who showed up today and discovered that their polling units have been reassigned? Some got text message. I did.
Yes, I did.
My wife did, thankfully, but there are quite a number of persons who probably didn't get over these network challenges that we have had in the last couple of days, and a whole lot others are not even available, don't have access to the phone lines. What do you make of that explanation?
First off, I believe that there's nothing wrong with reassigning people if a particular polling unit is overpopulated, for ease of management and all that. But it should be done early. You don't, first off, I don't even understand the rationale behind, starting the intense voter registration, probably 2 years before or 1 year before. Then you cut it short so early. Then when you're done, you want to clean up the register. Then of course you print before you now reassign or assign. I believe that as we are going, and developing our electoral jurisprudence and processes, it's high time. If you need to reassign people, you must take a look at certain, peculiarities and of course demography. So if you have people who are aged above 55, for example, there are quite a number of people who are 55 who are not even able to go distance. They don't even go far anymore. So you take someone who is 66 and above to probably their vote polling unit used to be like 5 minutes walking distance from their houses. You take them to a distance of about 30 minutes walking distance. How are they going to get there? That's number one. Then number two, it also makes it very difficult because they may naturally discover that on the election day. The INEC chairman clearly also said that they understand that not every Nigerian has access to internet or what do you call it?
Mobile phones.
What do you call this mobile phone basically?
Yes.
Some use the regular, should I call it analog phone?
Smartphones you're talking about.
Smartphone, rather, that's the word, smartphone.
Yeah.
Not every Nigerian has access to smartphones. Some people use the regular phone. So how do you, decipher from who has that opportunity?
All right, so let's hold that thought right now. Right now, we're going to go to our man, Victor, is in Port Harcourt, to give us an update on what's going on there. Hello, Victor, are you there?
Trying to do TV something. No, go ahead. Hello? Oh, yes, my name is... Hello?
Go ahead, Victor. We can hear you. Can we have what the situation update is?
Yeah, I'm at Unit 7, Ward 9, Gumeme, Obiapo local government of Rivers State. The governor, Governor Wilson Wike, had challenged earlier over the malfunction of a beavers machine. So the man was delayed for about 2 hours before he was able to vote. He voted, but the beavers was not able to capture the wife. So the wife had to stay behind for the beaver to come up. Meanwhile, the reporter with Punch was just arrested because he wanted to do a video of policemen brutalizing a voter. They arrested him and bundled him in the vehicle and took him away. So that's the situation at Unit 7, Ward 9, Rumeme, Obiapo local government area.
Okay, Victor, for clarity, who was bundled out?
The person that was bundled is Bunga Oladimeni of a Punch newspaper.
Okay. Okay, but have there been any other explanation around where he was taken to?
Yes. The team that arrested him, the SOS squad of River State Police Command.
Okay.
So they took him to their office. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, it was slapped severally. He was taken away before they bundled him in the vehicle.
Okay. Other than this incident, from your monitorings around other parts of the states, are there cases of violence or late arrival of voting material and all that? What can you tell us, other than the polling unit of the government?
There's no report of violence as it stands now, but the major challenges having here is that the election and the accreditation of voters are being delayed. Because first, some of the polling units materials arrived late. And where the materials arrived earlier, they have the issue of malfunction beavers. So many of the electorates are very, very uncomfortable with the situation. But the turnout of vote is very, very excellent. People are very, very eager. People are very enthusiastic to vote. So that's the situation. There's no report of violence as of now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Victor, for that update. We will come back to you in the course of the program to continue to get updates from and around Port Harcourt.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have listened to the updates there from Victor. He talks about malfunctioning beavers, late arrival, which we had lightly touched on. But shortly before we take the next report, I would like you to speak to something which is becoming a recurring decimal in our election: the brutal handling of journalists during the election. I had, which in my case, a similar experience this morning, but mine wasn't brutal. I saw the heavy presence of security, and I decided to do a short video to feed back the office. But interestingly, 2 or 3 police officers have to advance my position, walking into my shooting line, just basically to ascertain that I had accreditation. What can we do about other stakeholders in the election, understanding the place of journalists and observers during election? This continuous brutal handling of journalists or destroying their equipment in our election, isn't this something we should have outgrown in 2023?
Absolutely. I agree 100%. In 2022, we ought to have outgrown these, kinds of police, reports from that police is brutalizing journalists. Journalists are supposed to be friends of everybody. And when it affects the police or the uniformed personnel, they look for journalists to push their cause. But when it appears as if they are doing something wrong, they suddenly look at journalists as their enemy. Unfortunately, you cannot pick and choose when to be friends with journalists or when not to be friends with journalists. Just like, during a war situation, you need the journalists to tell your story. The propagandas of war are told through the lens of journalists. Without the journalists there, nobody would know whether you are being dealt with or if there are acts of war crimes being committed against you. But when you are the one committing the war crimes or doing something wrong, naturally you see that they go against journalists. I mean, this is highly condemnable, and I believe that part of the budget of INEC includes the training of security forces. Using the interagency, collaborations and all that. And I heard the police spokesman, he spoke to the fact that they've had a very fantastic relationship with INEC over the years through the preparations and all, and there has been a lot of training, given to the police officers. So these questions, what type of training were they given? Or is it that they were trained but they were not listening to the training? Because the police force must understand first that you need to have the citizenry before you can even police them. And when you say police is your friend, to what extent is really police my friend? If you can take a look at a journalist with his accreditation, there are better ways to even certify that this man, you could allow the man finish because you're still standing there and say, gentlemen, who are you? After the video, who are you? Why are you videoing? Oh, I'm a journalist. Oh, great. Do a good report. That would be fine enough. And they do not also understand that human angle stories go far. So if the human angle story is bad, it speaks to the negativity of all. If the human angle story speaks to the humane and, of course, the professionalism of the service, police, DSS, NC, Nigerian Security Defense Corps, or the military, unfortunately, we will not be able to accept that. This is a civil process, and it must be civil in every ramification.
It must be civil in every ramification. Right now, I'm talking about security. We'll go to a man in Kogi, that's Labarang, who's standing by with an update regarding the security situation there. Labarang, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, all right. So what's the update of the security situation there in Kogi?
In Kogi is a particular... The situation is so dicey, but the security people are on top of the game as the report that is coming in. This morning, the election started smoothly. A few hours after it, some boys entered the town and started attacking the electric, destroying the electoral materials. And in the end, it disrupted the proceedings.
Can you tell us what areas exactly were these attacked? Labran, are you still with us? We lost him there. We will try to establish contact with Labran to further buttress what kind of attack he seemed to be talking about from Kogi State and how far-reaching this attack would be and what consequence, of course, it will have for voting as far as that area of Kogi State is concerned. These are disturbing developments we are getting from the states with all of the show of force, the police deployment, especially because these areas do appear to be flashpoints that have been recognized prior to today. Are you disappointed that these guys could still succeed in staging one or two attacks?
Well, somewhat. I mean, I envisaged that there would be skirmishes here and there, especially, with the flashpoints that were identified from previous elections and, of course, the pre-election activities and all that. And, of course, during the campaigns, you saw clearly that there are certain locations where even certain candidates were not even able to campaign. I mean, for example, the PDP candidate couldn't even go for a rally in Rivers State. I also heard that the Labour Party candidate also went to do market storming in Port Harcourt. The governor came and told him it's not safe, so he had to leave. And unfortunately, I don't know how we are going to overcome this, if this is as a result of the style of leadership in the state, or if the police in the state is overwhelmed. But unfortunately, we also have similar situations in Lagos. Reports I'm getting, shows clearly that there is a lot of intimidation going on in certain localities. People are being beaten up, ballot box snatching, people are wielding guns, machetes, and the rest of them. I think in one of the polling units of, I think around Elegushi in Lagos, that's the polling unit of the former presidential candidate of the Professor Sonaya.
Yes, the female
presidential candidate. I can't remember the Kowa party.
Yes.
The former presidential candidate of the Kowa party in 2015 election. She reported that a particular Sienna vehicle pulled up at their polling unit and some youths came out with wielding sticks and all that. So they quickly made a call, and within 2-3 minutes, the security agencies, showed up. Some scampered to save that. Of course, they were arrested. Now that is in a particular locality. There are certain localities that it might take longer time. Just like you have abroad. If you live in certain zip codes, you get quick response to security. If you live in certain zip codes, it takes longer time. So subject to the volume of tax you pay, that's the volume
that's what determines the kind of service
security you get. It also happens in Nigeria like that. So basically.
All right. Well, still talking about the conduct of the elections. Earlier, the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Yusuf Dattibabu Ahmed, was able to cast his vote in his polling unit there in Zaria. Let's hear what he had to say.
The conduct of elections so far at this polling unit of this ward in Zaria local government of Kaduna State is indeed running smoothly so far, and is highly commendable. The electorates have been exercising their civic responsibilities responsibly, and INEC has met expectations, and we can feel the air of serenity, peace around. We can also see cordiality among the electorate. Everybody is at peace with everybody so far. So this is highly commendable.
Are likely regarded as the major turnout during elections. Are you satisfied with the level of turnout in your polling?
Well, so far I can see a longer queue of the men than women over here. But at the end of the day, the polling results will tell us this. But women have been contributing their parts very well, and we're grateful for that.
And how can you describe the process, looking at the fact that new technology has been introduced into the elections?
Up to this point, we have not yet been disappointed, and we hope not to be disappointed. Remember, it is only the end result. When the results here are transmitted without hitches, without interference, without let-go hindrance, and they are duly collated, and the winner is duly elected, that we'll be able to make a firm statement on your question.
So what your party signed to the peace accord.
Yeah.
How are you going to ensure that you follow it through to ensure that the peace accord that you signed?
The way we conducted our most peaceful campaigns all over Nigeria, one of its kind, is the first testament to which, but there is this caveat that we are all skipping, so to put it, that as long as the elections are adjudged to be free, fair, and just. So keep that in mind. However, even to the contrary of that, we have never been the kind of people that will incite anything besides peace. But we also insist firmly on justice being done.
And what's your message to Nigerians generally?
Well, before the end of these elections, what we have been saying before the close of campaigns, and of course this is not a campaign, look far and wide, look deeply, elect whom your senses tells you is the best leader for yourself, devoid of considerations of religion and ethnicity. Vote competence, capacity, character, and compassion. This is what we've been saying, and this is not a campaign.
Okay, so I want to just ask this question. Now, looking at the financial cash situation of this country, some voters will likely find it difficult to go to their polling. So how is it going to affect the outcome of the election?
If you think deeply, like some people often do, the withdrawal of cash from the system just before election is more or less a statement on the entire Nigerian society that if the government does not withdraw cash, you are likely to sell your votes. That is most unfortunate. And let us see an election that took place without cash. Let us see, compare it to those that held with cash. If it is a simple matter of traveling around, people have always been able to travel around with or without that level of cash that you have seen. As for me, my principal, my party, our system, we have never believed in money politics and we will never do it. We'll never do it. We believe in the electorate, the typical Nigerian themselves taking conscious decisions as to where their fate lies and as to where their destiny is headed without any influence of cash whatsoever or coercion of religious and tribal forces whatsoever. This has always been our attitude, my attitude even before I joined the Labour Party. I have never believed in financial politics.
I faced when I come out to look for my polling units is that they gave me a slip where I'm going to vote. So I find out that the place that I'm going to vote was not actually the place because they scattered, the team was just scattering because I went there. Once I get there, that they said that they shift the polling units from there to area 1.
Okay.
So I went to area 1 side looking for where I would vote. So I get there. So they didn't. I reached there. So I didn't see my number. That is 131. I didn't see that. So I left there. That I should come back to Kado village. So I went to Kado village to look for the number. I get there, so I've already moved about 6 polling units this morning.
6 polling units?
6 polling units this morning, looking for where I will vote. I didn't see where I will vote. I didn't see it, so I was just like, this was just frustrated, I was like tired, so let me just be going home, since I don't see where I will vote. I just came to this place, FF City here. So I get here, and this actually is not the place I want to vote, but my place is at FF City, Kado village. That is my.
So what you're saying that the information is not really clear. It's not really giving you the direct location.
The direction is not really clear. The information is not really clear. But everything just scattered. What I'm trying to say is that anytime they are doing something like this, because this digital type of stuff, right? It's not really the thing we needed. It's not what we needed. We need something that you can just check in system and know where you need to vote and let the place be sure. If you have let the place be sure, let the place be okay to vote. That's just my focus.
Thank you very much.
And that's a voter there from the Gwarinpa district expressing frustrations that he had to endure following the late reassignment to another polling unit. We also listened to the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Yusuf Baba Detti. They are saying what had happened at his own polling unit. We'll move straight to Labaran in Kogi State to finish his thoughts on the developments from Kogi. Welcome back, Labaran.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you were telling us about a certain attack in Kogi. Can you tell us exactly where this attack had come in and what seemed to be the latest information from that?
Actually, a young man was killed. Woman killed in Amba at the early hours of the around 11 a.m. during the voting period.
Okay.
So came to the polling unit, attacked the electorate or the voters, disrupted the proceeding, ballot papers, ballot boxes, were smashed and carried away from the polling unit. So the confusion that followed led to the killing of the young man at the polling unit at EG in Anambra town.
Okay, in Anambra town. The young man that was killed, was he an electoral official or a Nigerian that had come out to vote?
He is not an electoral official or he believes that he is loyal to one of the political parties.
Thank you very much.
So has it been established who's responsible for it? Is it the thugs that attacked, or is it the security agents? Has it been established who's responsible?
There's a conflicting report came from. Some were saying it's a good agent that came there to calm the situation. Some were also the bullet came from the talks.
Okay. All right. So how's the situation like now in that area?
In about the situation from the natives, it has been brought under control. The voting has commenced, but the situation there is that they say the particular party is the one that is voting, the others are not voting.
All right, quite interesting developments there. Thank you very much, Labarang, and I believe you'll keep an eye on that for us, and we'll touch down and, of course, get some more details from you as it unfolds. Thank you very much, Labarang. All right, so our man there from Kogi giving us some information about a particular attack. I mean, like we've talked about this earlier, security has been a major issue coming into these elections, or the lack thereof. And we were talking about flashpoints earlier. You would think that since we identified these flashpoints, that there will be measures, proactive measures made to forestall these occurrences. Where do we have this lack? Is it a lack of coordination? Is it a lack of intelligence? Is it a lack of use of the intelligence that we have, or is it a testament to the shortage of security agents that we actually have? Because that has been given as a particular reason as well.
Well, I think it's a combination of both, if not all. I agree that we have shortage of security personnel, but what we have is a combination, is interagency activity. So you're not talking of just the police. You're talking about the police. The DSS is actually in charge of. The DSS is coordinating, but the police is the lead organization for the securities in Nigeria for this election. So you have the DSS, the police, the civil defense, you have the immigration, the customs, you have the military, you have the military as a whole. So when you if you combine them, that's a massive pool of personnel. I think where this should rest purely is one, our inability to use, intelligence as they come, and of course our poor coordination, when it comes, because I mean you clearly know you have 176,000 plus polling units. There is a police station in every ward in Nigeria. In fact, if you check further, you will probably see more. There is at least one police station that has at least 3 or 4 personnel there. So some of these police officers were not deployed. So you have those as backup. You have the military, in several locations, and of course the civil defense, and then add the other sister agencies and all. So I do not believe that we are short. I believe it's about lack of, use of intel. I think it's about poor coordination, and we need to do much better than what we're doing.
But some might argue that the police being deployed to polling units are not allowed to carry arms. They have only batons. So in a situation whereby you're at a polling station, you're holding your baton, and then these thugs come armed with weapons, guns and AK-47s and the rest of them, what can you do with a baton? I mean, like that is the argument that a lot of people actually put forward.
So if I understand clearly the structure of policing for elections. So you have at the polling unit, like in my polling unit, which is directly in front of a police station, for example. If you go a few meters away, you see another polling unit, which is not in front of a police station. So right in front of us there, we had civil defense, I think 2 personnel. We had police, like 6 without arms. Then we had road safety. In fact, I forgot road safety. So
and
VIO road safety, there are about 8 road safety. VIO is about 5. Now you have these people inside the police station. They have arms. So that's like a backup. And you have similar, structure across all the polling units. So for every polling unit or pool of polling unit, there are specific allocation of security personnel, armed security personnel that will be called at short notice to come in. It is the failure of either those at the polling unit to alert the what do they call them, the reserve, to come in and take care of situations, But beyond that, I think we can do much more than what we're doing. In the past, we used to have a situation where you have, for every polling unit, you have a deployment of at least 2 or 3 or 4 personnel armed, but not at the polling unit. A few meters away from, you can see them, and you know if it serves as a deterrent. But of course, a lot of us in the civil society, argued and quarreled that is militarizing, the election is not supposed to be so. But we are peculiar in this path. I believe that democracy should not be borrowed verbatim, the way it's done, outside. For example, in America, they have, early voting. The military personnel, the security personnel, all vote at intervals. Like those of you at, on essential duty, like in your studio, there are so many people who cannot vote. But Nigerian democracy is borrowed from America. We don't do early voting. We do not have considerations for those who are on essential duties. We do not have elections hold 2-3 days. Elections is just 1 day, and that's why it appears so militant. So people are anxious that if it's not today, it will not happen. But if you have, it's a weekend, today and Sunday, right? Then it will probably calm things down a little. So you know that if you don't vote today, you still have opportunity to vote tomorrow. And that tension will reduce.
All right. Well, speaking about tension, one area coming into this election, I mean, like one one zone that has been on the forefront of these discussions has been the Southeast. And understand right now that we have our man Titus on the ground there from Anambra to give us an update on the situation there. Titus, are you there?
Yeah.
All right. So what is the situation there in Anambra?
Can you please bring us to speed with development? You are particularly talking about a location that has a candidate in this election. What is the feelers, given all the heightened fear around security concerns before this election?
Yeah, already as some of the young men
we seem to be having
the election and the
Titus, can you hear me? Yes, we seem to be having issues with the quality of your voice from your location. You may need to change location, and then we come back to you to take updates from Anambra. Okay, before we get back Titus online, we listened to the Vice President of the Labour Party saying so far everything has been smooth around where he has voted, and it will be considered successful if at the end of the day the machines would enable a smooth transmission of results. That would be the concluding part of the vivas in this election. But he went on to say something very instructive. He said he brought in the difficulty we had all been, the reality we had been living with prior to today's election, which was the cash difficulty. And he said it is unfortunate that the government in its strategy thinks that they have to withdraw cash from circulation to stop vote buying. But we would see after the election when we have the need to compare notes whether that is a strategy. I hope it's not something that will become a perpetual feature as we are now seeing with a major military deployment in our election. But how would you evaluate that comment from Dati Baba Ahmed?
I mean, Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed is a major player in this election. He's a contestant. And you would expect that in his polling unit, just like every other contestant in their polling unit, things will most likely work very well. Besides the issue of probably the card reader, the BVAS machine having one technical issue or the other, you do not expect that there will be ballot snatching in such polling units. You do not expect that the INEC staff will arrive late. You do not expect that you will have people fight in those areas. Just like somebody mentioned to me in my polling unit that I should look around, that the people here are gentlemen and ladies. It's not a place where you expect. I said, but yes, you're gentlemen and lady, but it took some of us to organize you. Yes, we know people are anxious. We know the excitement is there, but at the same time, everybody is want to go before the other person. You probably just arrived. You want to go before the other person. You may not have such in places where people like that would vote. And I believe honestly, and I hope that when post-mortem is taken, and we discover that election without money appears better, appears freer, I hope and pray we don't make it a recurring death.
That was what I was going to ask. I was going to ask, in a situation whereby this has proven to be successful, so are we expecting a currency change every 4 years?
I don't know. This morning I got a video from a very senior friend of mine who is in the security service, and he showed stacks of old 1,000 notes in bundles. That, you know, this is something you probably see in CBN, but this was somebody's house, and I don't have hair, but my hair all stood up. I became scared. Stack of bundles, not wraps, bundles taller than myself, about 5, and that scared me. And I showed my wife, and she said, so this is the reason why the president took that decision. And this is the reason why some people were fighting. So who owns this? I said, I don't know. This came from. So people probably who work with such people did that video privately and shared it.
Okay.
You know.
The interesting developments there. We now have Hope Abba in Makurdi joining us. Hope, good afternoon. What's the situation in Makurdi at this time?
Good afternoon. The situation here is firm. The election is going on peacefully. And I can say that there is a massive turnout of voters in almost all the states in the city, the local government, and parts of the state. But here in Gombe, voting did not commence from schools until about 11:12 due to the delay of materials and then dry time.
Okay, so you talked about late turnout of voters. What about the conduct of the voters? How has it been so far? Have we had any skirmishes anywhere or attack, as the case may be?
No, there has not been any attack so far. Except that some of the voters are looking for their polling units. They don't know where it is located, and that is because some of the polling units are just placed.
Okay, were there INEC officials on ground to help with people who had that kind of difficulty?
They keep asking them to check another polling unit. They go there, they check, and then they will not find the names available to them in the first polling unit, and then they keep moving around. So far, some of them that I spoke with complain that they've not been able to locate their polling units.
Thank you very much, Hope. We will come back to you in the course of the program to get more update from the situation in Makurdi. Coming back to you, the question of people finding it difficult to locate their polling units is beginning to appear rampant.
Yes.
I hope somehow this number, does not get disenfranchised at the end of the day, because what I noticed in my case, which we were talking about during the break, was that you could be taken somewhere that will require you going beyond or between military checkpoints or police checkpoints, and that becomes a problem, because what they do is basically barricades the route, and there are no commercial transport or personal vehicle allowed to move around freely. What can we do to ensure, because the INEC chairman was repeating emphatically that everybody who wants to vote will have the opportunity to vote. How do we take care of these people who have shown enthusiasm, have shown faith in the system, went through all the rigors to register or even transfer, as the case may be, obtain their PVCs, and now are finding it difficult to locate their polling units?
Election management is project management. And when you look at the repeated, complaints from people, which we've seen, and the number is beginning to balloon. And it's like I mentioned earlier, it's not enough for you to explain, because you really can't explain everything away. The reality is that, look at the young man in Gwarimpa Ward who was told to go to Area 1. From Area 1, he was told to go to Kado. There are about 3-4 Kado in Abuja. So which of the Kado should he go to? Some people only know one Kado, but they don't know that there is Kado Kuchi, and there's another Kado, where you have the fish market and all that. So which of the Kado do you want him to go to? And Abuja is not yet labeled properly like that. And just like you have if you go to Borno State, the Maiduguri Metropolitan Council is surrounded by Jere. If you do not understand it, you think Jere is some far-flung location. They are interfused. You have something like that in Abuja. So if you do not understand, you might find it very difficult to locate your location. I have a sister who lives around Jahi. Her polling unit is around Life Camp. How will she move? How do you expect her to move from Jahi to Life Camp? She must, and she will definitely meet those checkpoints. And she may be disenfranchised. So there you have these pockets of issues. Well, I want to call it pockets of issues because we are yet to, get the number of people who will who fall into this category. And I see quite a number of people like that who are falling. And my fear is, if you get older people within this category, it will be very difficult for them to locate those.
In fairness, though, the INEC chairman said there were measures to really get people acquainted with these developments. They had made website addresses available where people can just punch in these numbers and get clarity around those. They sent text messages, as he said, and I mean, he talked about sensitization that happened at state and all of that. What they did not plan for was the numbers that all of these measures would not have impacted.
Correct.
Clearly, as we saw with those young persons who are not bothered about what INEC had done prior to that day. They are just interested in where
they want to go and vote.
Cast their vote. Should they have made some arrangements of some kind of persons who basically just sit and provide clarity?
Absolutely.
Other than just being involved with electoral activity, you just more like a crisis resolution desk. I have this problem, I was here, I've now been transferred. And you punch in these numbers and give clarity around where they should go to and all that. Shouldn't we have had that kind of ad hoc arrangement, if you like?
So it takes a whole lot, from what I've gathered and what I've experienced in the Nigerian system, is the fact that a lot of government agencies or government establishments are not really keen on feedback mechanisms, because what you're talking about suggests feedback system, and you're dealing with people, and your people come out to register. It's a Herculean task to register to vote. It's another Herculean task to also collect your PVCs. In other climes, you don't need the PVCs to vote.
Yes.
You need Social Security, which is our own NIN. So if you have NIN, you're qualified to vote because that's data. If you have any government ID, you're qualified to vote because that is government issued ID. What you should do is that all government agencies should sync those IDs to a particular, maybe these VBIVAs. So if you're in a particular locality, because people live in particular areas, which is called ward, which INEC has turned to word, and of course a polling unit. You use the word to give people their polling unit, giving their address, because the address system works in largely a lot of places in Nigeria. Even in Borno State, if you put Google Map to locate certain places, you will find it. But what has failed for us as a country is the fact that we have this craze for proliferation of identities. So the police have their own ID, which they've jettisoned over time. The digital economy people came up with NIN. You have the immigration identity, which is the international passport. You have the driver's license, which is another identity. Then, of course, you have the voter's card. Maybe more will come, or probably, since many people are crying for change in the country, which the current party said they were going to give us. Other people are calling it another change. Maybe we may get people who will sit down and think these things through. Because if they do, the amount of money we spend on our election cannot be explained. I don't think there's anywhere in the world, even America that has probably larger number of voters, much more. American election is over 200 million people voting. I do not think they've spent this amount of money. Maybe we should adopt American system, allowing states to run
their own, elections.
but make it more independent, unfortunately.
All right, well, there's still lots of issues to actually dissect and, of course, to analyze. We're still Nigeria Decides on Trust TV. We'll take a short break right now. When we return, the phone lines will be open to give the viewers the opportunity to call in and, of course, air their views and their own analysis, as well as Nigeria Decides today. Do stay with us.
Well, I thank God I've been able to perform my civic duty. I have come and I have casted my vote. And may we have peace in the country during this election. procedure I have seen is very comfortable. It is very easy. Once they identify you, they give you a voting card, and then you go to cast your vote. I think from what I have seen, everything is going on smoothly and peacefully.
This is the president. This is senatorial.
Okay, but this ink is not enough. Can you just go ahead then?
Now like this. But what I mean is that I don't know which one be Senate, which one be
He is reading here now.
Yeah, show me the place.
Yeah, read that here. Who pushed me down?
Let me get more information.
Are you done? Are you done? Just a few minutes. Malik.
I saw people sitting on the other side. They look There's one that they cut out from there. There's one that she cut out for demonstration. Have you returned it? I thought of it if you go to the back.
Just write down the figures. People like that.
I don't like yeah, they are running Allah. That's why you try to argue. How can you think of the not alive voting? No. We must vote! 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 We must vote!
Nasarawa State. This is Magajin Gari 1. The INEC materials is just arriving now, and I think voters are still coming up to like make their vote. And also this is I think this is 11:27 a.m. That's when the materials are just coming. Thank you.
When you go like the last one we did, this was just coming to our work. We said, look at the video. And you can even this one, 10 o'clock, I don't see some here.
Okay, ma'am.
No.
Stay on the line.
Oh, it's serious.
Like Edward, those two way of the bring.
What?
Emmanuel, I go. Let me start by knowing your name and your position in this election.
Okay, my name is Ali Abubakar. Saliu Abubakar.
Okay.
I'm the presiding officer of polling units 024. We are waiting for security attached to our units. But as you can see, the police car is here. Maybe, hopefully, I know maybe they have bring the policeman security attached to us.
Nomban mutanen da suka rijista a kudi unit din nan mutum 949 gashi a cikin mashin. Da shi ba wanda aka muwa yana kiwo. Da mun fara mashin zai fara rijin. Nomban mutanen da muka yi rijin zai fara.
This one of the peaceful voter. This one of the peaceful. We make effort to arrange for our canopy. INEC don't have plan for us, but we want to vote. Yes. We pay for canopy. We bring it, arrange for the INEC. So we are actually passing message for INEC to make plan for the polling units before time for voting. That's why you see we are starting voting at 9:49. While the voting is supposed to start at 8:30 a.m. but it's starting at 9:49 because the INEC did not make arrangement for the polling unit. So we have to go around and bring chairs, canopies and other things because our people are ready to vote. Yes.
The INEC officials were on ground. That's a challenge we have. There is no table, chair and canopy for them to set up all their ballots posts and then get settled for the election. But however, we were able to meet up with all these demands. We commenced. The only issue I'm having that the party agents are saying closer to the voting session, which we complain. Only the military guys were able to disperse them, but the civil defense, they were just gathering, discussing on their own, not be able to do what they are here to do. So I appeal to them to stay more focused, to avoid people coming to cause chaos in these various voting units. That's all for now, but so far I have voted, it's peaceful and everybody is on cue. God bless Nigeria.
Welcome back. Those are the sounds and signs from across the country of what has been largely peaceful, save for one or two reporters skirmishes here and there, largely from Lagos, Kogi, Kano, and we are hearing Goza and some parts of Enugu State. We are now joined in the studio by Mukhtar Suleiman, who is a public affairs analyst. He's been roaming around the city of Abuja all morning. I'm not sure how much weight he has lost yet.
Oh, well, we'll
at the end of the day, you have to do a weight count. I hope you took the numbers in the morning before starting else. But
you know, it's one of those rare things where I'm actually walking behind my car.
Oh, interesting. You went out strictly on monitoring, especially of the process.
Yes.
What would you tell us about what you had seen so far?
First things first, I think I just visited a few polling units in the morning. We have a situation room in one of the hotels here in Abuja where we are also observing the elections nationally across. We have observers, Connected Development particularly has observers across almost all the 36 states and almost all of the polling units in the country, deploying over 20,000 observers across the country. And it has been really interesting actually, and like we're saying before the cameras came out, it's quite unconventional what's happening this time. We're seeing a new precedence in our electioneering process. For the first time since the history of our democracy, we had situations where voters were out by 7 a.m. already waiting. By 8 a.m., INEC officials were there. Yes, there were lag and delays in some places, but for a larger part of it, it has been an interestingly boring election, which is really something I was looking forward to.
Interestingly boring.
Yeah, it's interestingly boring.
Boring is good. In this situation, boring is actually good.
Yeah, actually, we're hoping that it stays that way. Of course, we've been seeing a lot of pockets of security issues here and there, particularly in Kogi and Lagos, which was foresaw and predicted anyway. Especially, I think the whole of the Kogi threat went off when we saw the excavating thing that happened yesterday night. but we're hoping that things can actually change a little, and whatever it is that has happened now can actually die down and not escalate beyond the point it has
All right, well, we do hope so as well. As things go on, we just hope that things keep going as they are right now. Well, talking about what's going on, Ayuba is standing by and is going to read out some statistics with the little gizmos there. Ayuba, what is the gizmo telling us?
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Ibrahim. Thank you, Sunday. Thank you, Mukhtar. Well, it's very important that while we talk about the conduct of the elections as regards the issue of security and violence, would like to just take a look at what happened in the build-up to the elections. And it seems like the violence or the attacks that we have seen in this election is almost sort of expected because of the narratives and the way the campaigns have gone and some of the attacks. So if you, for instance, take a look at attacks on INEC offices across the country between 2019, when we had the last election, and 2023, at least we had 52 incidents of attacks in INEC offices. That's just to give you a sense of, you know, where to focus or ask the questions. Why have we seen these attacks on INEC offices? And we also understand that these attacks happened specifically across the country indeed, but then there seem to be more of the attacks in certain locations. So in the southeastern part of the country, we've seen more of the attacks, about 11 cases in Imo State alone. For instance, we've also seen in Osun State and in Enugu State, we had 7 cases each of attack on INEC facilities. You have 1 attack in Kaduna, 1 in Ogun, 1 in Lagos, 1 in Bayelsa State, 2 cases in Anambra, and also we had Abia State where we had 4 cases, as well as Akwa Ibom where you had 5 cases. In Borno, you have 1 case, and then in Taraba we had 2 cases, and then of course in Ebonyi and Cross River we had 4 cases each for these places. So when you look at that, it's almost expected that this 2023 election is going to be tough.
So now these attacks we're talking about specifically INEC offices and INEC facilities.
Yes, and this is for INEC offices. Now, if you look at other attacks, which we are going to look at eventually, talking about security situation across the country aside INEC offices, you could see that we had in January, in the month of January alone, about 749 fatalities across the country. That's quite huge for an electioneering season, you know. And some of these attacks happened while the campaigns are going on and the rest.
I would like you to hold your thoughts there, Ayuba. We will come back to you. I would like Mukhtar to speak to some of these numbers. We saw these various attacks, especially targeted at the presence of the state. INEC offices, police stations, and all. Since these things happened way before this time, we had expected the state to respond vehemently, especially on a day like this, in order not to deter people or even create a sense of security and to enable people come out for the election. What would you say, how would you describe the response of the state to this attack?
Well, I would say it has been a bit too relaxed, and less decisive action has actually gone into it. I've always argued that despite the grievances of the southeastern people, actions like this actually contravenes the democratic process. So when you do this, you are actually disenfranchising yourself as a person, and that affects you as a people, because for you to be a part of the democratic process, or for you to actually have your voice heard, this is one of the significant parts of the social contract you have to fulfill, and you've not been able to fulfill that. So because of that, that really affects our electionary, what is really happening in the southeast now. We know that in the morning when we're monitoring the elections, we know that for hours, Abia State had no INEC presence anywhere in the state. Yesterday night, we saw that the INEC cancelled Enugu senatorial elections, and most of these are because these ad hoc staff and INEC officials are human beings who don't want to die, and the commission has to do everything possible to ensure that they protect the lives and ensure the lives of their staff is protected at all costs. So, the state governors have a very significant role to play, not just even the state governors, all of the state actors that actually operate within that region. So more needs to be done in terms of that. Another thing that have actually been a bone of contention for me since when INEC released the number of collected PVC has always been on what side of the divide did destroyed PVC go into? Because I was expecting to see data on that. When I saw the breakdown, that
they didn't
data did not, it didn't disaggregate that, oh, destroyed PVCs are here, or there's a separate data for destroyed PVCs, because we saw a whooping amount of collection according to INEC data, 87 million plus. That's a lot. That's almost 90%
That's right.
collection. And then we saw 90-something% collection rate across different states. That is huge. I saw 99% somewhere. I was shocked. Which is, well, I hope at some point I'm sure that we're all going to sit down and interrogate most of this data. But just to also conclude, we're hoping that more clarity can come out of that, because that's actually a big gap, especially for the southeastern part of the country.
All right, well, we just spoke about the response of the states to all these attacks and how the security situation actually is. What about the response of the people? You have been fortunate enough to have eyes and ears, just like you said, across the nation, and concerning voter turnout, because most of these things will actually play a role in determining whether people come out or not. Because if people don't feel safe, they will not come out. Do you think that has actually influenced the number?
I think it has. Security is not the job of security personnel alone. Security, because the people who perpetrate insecurity are citizens like you and me, they're humans like you and me. So of course, the security personnel are being trained to counter most of these issues, but also we also have a role to play in most of these things. It's quite unfortunate what's really happening in that region, and I'm sure, yes, categorically it has really affected people coming away. We've still not gotten an explanation as to why there was so much delay for election INEC staff presence in Abia State. I'm hoping that eventually we would, but before that comes out, you can actually deduce that it could be because of the insecurity matter. People were trying to observe to ensure that, okay, is it safe to come out? Is it not safe to come out? But one thing you cannot take away is that a lot of people are out there and they want to cast their franchise.
Interesting analysis there from Mukhtar. We will come back to Mukhtar to explain some of the feelers we are getting from places like Kuje, where we understand there has been some kind of disruption. He will be able to provide us some level of clarity. We now have a caller, Kelvin from Delta. Good afternoon, Kelvin. Where exactly are you talking to us from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Asaba. I'm in Asaba now.
Asaba, thanks. Can you tell us what your observation has been around the election and how the general atmosphere is in Asaba? We understand that's very significant, considering that the PDP vice presidential candidate is from that part of town.
Yes. Here in Asaba, the election is going on peacefully. Electors came out in March, cast their votes, and all is well over. We don't have any issue of violence, and everything is peaceful.
Okay, but what about the turnout of INEC officials? Were they there on time? Did the process go smoothly? Do we have people disrupting voting centers and all of that? Have you recorded any such incident in Asaba?
No. We don't have any destruction here in Asaba or Delta North. Everything is well. The INEC officials, they came at Atlantic. Only few areas like the Warri South, Delta South, under Warri. That's where we are having issues now. As at this morning, I got information there that the INEC officials will come out at Atlantic.
Okay.
Every area is peaceful.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kevin, for your update. We would appreciate if we could still hear from you as events continue to unfold around that part of town.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. We've been talking updates from across the states in Nigeria, and you are sure that we'll continue to keep you abreast with developments as they unfold. And we'll give you updates. As some of these kit makers will always say, we have come with another update. We will keep giving you updates as events unfold. This time, we would hear from Ayuba, who has some data that are very useful to our conversation at this moment. Ayuba,
yes.
We come back to you again.
Yes, thank you so much, Sunday. Well, we've seen how some of the attacks, that have been going on leading up to the general elections. Now, earlier on, I talked about INEC offices that have been attacked, and if you look at the map here, it shows exactly what I explained earlier: 42 incidents in 15 states of the country. Where we had the highest number of attacks is Imo State, and then also following Imo State, we had Enugu and Osun State. Now, if you also look further into the security situation, we had 749 total fatalities in the month of January alone. 208 of those attacks are individuals that have been kidnapped, leading up to the elections. And then 236 people were injured, and then total number of incidences is 375. If you look at the map, virtually all the states that have been one form of attack or the other, 35 states, I think with the exception of the FCT, where we've not seen any attack recorded as such. So other attacks as well in the month of January, if we look at the map, based on the regions, you'd see that there's quite a number of attacks in the northwestern part of the country that has the highest, about 35% of the attacks that happened in the month of January took place in the northwestern part of the country. Following up is northeastern part of the country with 22%, and also 20% in the north central. In the southeast, you had 10%, and then southwest 9%, and then south 4%. Now, it may sound unbelievable. The southeast has only 10% of the attack, but it appears to be the loudest. A lot of people feel like there's been a lot of attack in the southeastern part of the country. Now, if you take a comparison of that data between December and the month of January, you could see the difference in terms of the incidences that we have seen. We've seen more incidences in the month of January, and then less of that in December. That is, there's an increase by 15% of incidences of attacks that were recorded. And then for abductions, we had 683 abductions in the month of December, and that's 2022, and then only about 208 in the month of January. So that's a 70% reduction in that number. We also have other figures showing the fatalities. There's a drop in the number of fatalities from 954 to 749. So between December 2022, there's been a drop in the number of attacks regardless. So these are some of the numbers that we have in the moment. So it's not going to be surprising to see the kind of stories or feelers we're getting from the field today, that certain states have experienced some attacks. A video that has gone viral is showing someone saying, well, if you're not voting for a particular party, then you should leave the place of some sort. And you would wonder, there are security officials that are meant to be in those locations, but the person is confidently there saying what he's saying, So it raises the question as to what kind of deployments have we made? The police have said over 400,000 police officers will be deployed across the country. So if 400,000 police officers alone have been deployed across the country, how many police officers do we have per polling unit? And then if we are to add other security personnel in all that are working alongside the police, how many do we have in total, and whether or not that would be enough to actually help curb the cases of violence that we have seen and all of that. There are some few ballot snatches, and from what we understand, some persons, the security personnel even shot at some persons who were engaging in such criminality. So we continue to follow up and see what comes out, or what's going to be the outcome in the entirety.
Thank you very much, Ayuba, for giving us those statistics and providing us with what appears to be a proper perspective for having this conversation. We were talking Kuje, It's not long ago that Kuje came drumming into everybody's ears after that, what appears to be a fantastic attack, if that's the right word to use, considering the proximity of Kuje to critical installations, whether it is the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport or even talking about proximity to the Federal Capital Territory. And now we have reported attack of or disruption of elections in Kuje, among several places where we have had this disruption today. What is this saying about the security situation around Kuje, essentially?
Well, at the expense of not sounding very insensitive, I don't sound very insensitive. Pockets of violence should not exist in our electioneering process, but pockets of violence is also always projected and expected. Not just even in our electioneering process, in election anywhere in the world. So it is actually sort of expected, but not in the volume with which we expected it. If you observe, we thought it was going to be a lot of violences that were going to happen at the same time simultaneously, but so far it has really gone on smoothly. It's quite unfortunate that happens in Kuje, where, like you said, Kuje being in the FCT and proximity to the prison, proximity to the airport and all of that. What does that even really mean? But then again, it shouldn't come off that shocking when we saw the prison break incident that happened some months ago, sometime last year. So it's really, really, it's quite unfortunate that that is happening, but we are hoping, like I've said earlier, that these issues are not escalated beyond the point that they're already in at this point. We're hoping that they can all die down, security personnel can step in and keep the sanity, keep the calm until everybody's done with their voting and everybody goes home peacefully, and then we wait for the elections with enthusiasm.
All right, well, just saw the data, and this data points to places where these things have actually happened frequently, and a lot of people who are actually expecting it, just like we've always said. Was there a failure of proactivity on part of this security agencies to actually foresee these things and act on them? Because we also saw it coming, because the data is actually there, because the attacks have actually been happening and we were looking at it. Is there a failure to actually address this proactively, just like we've seen in other incidences in the past?
Well, when you say failure, it sounds like, I wouldn't say failure per se. I would say there's a little bit of inefficiency in the deployment of the security infrastructure for the elections. Not because if I say failure, that means the entire security infrastructure failed, but it didn't actually, because like I said earlier, there's been pockets of violence. We have hot zones and hot spots, which are in Kogi and Lagos, and a few here and there, but it's not as much as we've always seen. It's not the regular. Very few, only one or two issues of ballot box snatching and the rest of that. So I'm hoping that, like I said, we're still hoping that all of this can actually be
okay. We continue to hope for the best in this election. We will now move straight over to our correspondent Shafiu Suleiman for an update from the Center for Development and Democracy. Shafiu, good afternoon.
From the International Idea.
Nasarawa State University and fellow at the Center for Development and Democracy.
Good afternoon. My name is A.B. Mahmoud. I'm a private lawyer, formerly president of the Nigeria Bar Association.
You didn't say SAN.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Fuke Badua. I'm a gender and development practitioner and a program officer for the Ford Foundation Office for West Africa.
Jibrin Ibrahim, Senior Fellow, Center for Democracy and Development.
My name is Laji Bala, the National President, Nigerian Association of Women Journalists.
Joe Abba, Country Director, DAI, and also Maastricht University in the Netherlands.
Ayumala Oluroti from Bangkok University, Ogun State.
My name is Chris Isiguzo, President, Nigeria Union of Journalists, President, Congress of African Journalists.
And my name is Awal Musa Sanjani, member CB Election Analysis Center.
Now, unlike yesterday, I'm going to stand up and talk because I see I want to bring back the teacher in me. So I will stand up and then say a few words. But the president...
No, they want you to sit down.
Oh, you want to sit
because they've set their cameras.
And then if I fall below expectations, it's your fault. Before we go into the press briefings proper, I want to give a few words in terms of background to what we have done and how we have got to where we are now to be able to issue this press statement. But I hope, because of the introductions that we have done, our colleagues from other situation rooms who are sitting down looking as if they are being harassed, I hope you will not feel intimidated. But you'll go back, we'll take something nice from here. So it's a pleasure to welcome you all, because I think it's all in the spirit of cooperation. I will come to your own also. Later, you can say worse things that I have said to you now when I come. You feel intimidated.
Oh, you're afraid.
Yeah. Anyway, as we said in the preliminary statement we issued yesterday, our work for the general elections for this year was framed around 5 issues that we've seen as trending in our electoral politics since independence, and also more recently over the last 2 electoral cycles, in terms of the dramatic improvement in INEC's preparation for the elections. The 5 areas are identity, 2, insecurity, 3, institutions, 4 would be information disorder, and 5, intra and inter-party politics. Now, in preparing this interim statement that we are putting together, giving you today, we are focusing only on 2 of the issues, namely insecurity and institutions, because the process is still unfolding, and we cannot say a little more on the other 3 because we have enough data, at least to talk in terms of trending, what is trending in respect of insecurity and institutions. The statement that follows has drawn on 2 sources. Data from our field observers, we have over 4,000 of them spread across the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. So that is our basic source of data, which is, of course, under our own control, because these are the people we have trained to go out and observe and give us information that will help us in our analysis of what they have observed on the field. The second source, of course, is information from other sources, which we feel that we cannot disregard, even though we cannot confirm them yet. But at least I think we owe it as a responsibility to the general public to see that these are pieces of other information which may not have been highlighted adequately or properly, or even not at all, in what we are getting from the field, but which we think will complement our own, should complement what we have said, even though we have not been able to verify them. But we have reasonable basis to believe that they may be true. So, with those introductory words, and the findings that what this statement we are preparing is what we have noticed, the reports we have got as of 12:30 today. So the next set of reports will be what has happened after 12:30 till the time we present that report. And I know we don't have the Chatham rules, or it's my pleasure to delegate to an analyst, a distinguished member of our group, the task of reading the statement that we have prepared for you. And after that, we'll take questions if you have any. So it's my pleasure to talk on Ladi Bala, the president of the Nigerian Guild of Women, Nigerian Association of Women Journalists.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. I can see that you're indeed a gender-sensitive chairman.
after struggle within the
Still Nigeria decides on Trust TV, giving you a front row seat to the action as Nigeria makes a very big decision today. So we just got some updates there from the CDD situation room concerning the conduct of the election, and of course fillers coming in from there. And we're going to keep you updated on happenings in and around the country. Talking about happenings in and around the country, we're going to open the phone lines now so that you can have an opportunity to call in and give us insights, and of course give us updates on how the election process is going on in your own neighborhood. Be mindful, please, when you call in, kindly move away from your television set so that we can be able to hear you, and of course we can have a conversation. Of course the numbers are going to be displayed on your screen so that you can give us a call and we will have those updates coming in. So we're still in the studio with Mukhtar Suleiman, and we're talking about the security situation and the response to security incidents. We saw some of these things coming proactive. We were not proactive in forestalling them. Do you think there's something we can do better?
Of course, there's always room for improvement, and we cannot always expand. We cannot always spend all of the resources that we have, no matter how it is. Learning is a continuous process. So I'm hoping now, if you look at the election that we're doing right now, this is the first time we are having this kind of election on this kind of scale. The introduction of the Electoral Act, the introduction of the BVAS, the changes the Electoral Act made to the electioneering process in its entirety. The first time that we are having an election since 2011 or 2007 without any form of postponement, a day before the election. A lot of people slept with one eyes closed. I am one of them. I kept checking my phone. Have they changed it? Have they, and I would really need to applaud the perseverance of the INEC chairman. I do not envy him in any way. He is in a very, very difficult position. Right now, he's the interim president, if I may say. Yeah, he's the one had to endure. Yeah, he's the one that is keeping the system afloat. We heard rumors, I don't know how confirmed, of people, vested interests who wanted the BVAS out, kicked out. People who tried to undermine the election process. People wanted it to be postponed, and this man stood firm.
Some people wanted him removed.
Yeah, some people wanted him removed at some point, and he stood fast. And for that, honestly, we really need to give him his flowers for those. But before we actually even go forward, there's something we sort of noticed. I would just like to bring up, which is we noticed that some polling units were allowing. It's a bit of a confusion, but not necessarily a confusion, because if you remember, there was that news going around last week that you can still go to your polling unit and vote even if you don't have your card.
Okay.
Now, that is a big problem, because some polling units from our own this thing, we got to notice that some people, there was debate in some polling units about whether it is possible, whether it is allowed or not.
All right, so we're just getting, feel as though we've gotten a call, and that's Danjuma from Taraba. Danjuma, good afternoon.
Hello. Good afternoon, sir.
All right. So what's the how's the election going on in your neighborhood?
Oh, the election is so beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, here in Wukari, in Taraba State.
Okay.
We are happy the machines are working perfectly, and the turnout is fantastic. We are looking forward to a better president and National Assembly members. Yes.
Danjuma, other than the machine working perfectly and the turnout, what about the commencement of voting? How early were the INEC staff at the various polling units in Wukari, if I may understand? And have you had any? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, we started election voting at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
10 a.m. this morning, and the machines have not really given us any problem. To the best of my understanding, that's my own polling.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Danjuma, for that update. Should anything come up that you think is of interest to us, we will be very open to hear from you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Mukhtar, we've been discussing attacks and things that have not worked, but interestingly, we have had an overwhelming endorsement, or positive statement around the beavers.
Yes,
it has worked largely in most of the polling units, surprisingly. To what extent would you describe the beavers as a game changer in this election?
You know, a lot of people actually thought that it was going to fail, actually. And I'm happy that it didn't, because then that would have raised a lot of questions as to the authenticity of the entire process and whatnot. But that's not been the case. We've heard situations where it failed, but not as much as the card readers of before. And I think that sort of speaks to the evolution of technology, which is something we should be open to, ensuring that we can allow in our system as we go forward as a people. What I'm even hoping for eventually as we go forward is maybe the next process we can have a machine where you don't have to put your hand on ink, but then you can just go and put your thumbprint, a biometric system, you can just go and put your thumbprint, count you as a voter, and then you move.
Which is full electronic voting.
Which is full electronic
Interesting.
Because we are having, this is the dry season, Harmattan season, we're having situations of some polling units where the ink is drying up.
All right. We would be going back to the Situation Room now to get more from what is going on there. Please stay with us.
With respect to jurists in terms of security, safety, and access so far. Thank you.
So what did you ask?
I think that is security issues during the access and
What have we heard?
okay.
You did mention that
the INEC that we just went to some and we did.
In some places, we didn't hear about the insecurity that you said is going to address in that report.
Talk about it now. Talk about the insecurity.
Yeah, let's respond to on the insecurity issue. There was a reference to reports of violence in some parts of the country to which we made reference. But when we give a comprehensive report at the end, we'll make some statement about that. But there are reports that we've got that we want to confirm before we say them. So do you want to ask?
As we said in our first press conference, insecurity is one of the issues we are monitoring very closely and for which we have a lot of concern. I think the general point that can be made is that the level of insecurity is not sufficiently high to significantly affect the polling. On the question of the turnout, our own observers just visited, we have less than 5,000 observers, so we can't make a general statement on the turnout for the polls, but INEC has indicated that it would soon give exact numbers of what the turnout is. And in any case, in the first preliminary report, you can't give turnout because people are still going to vote. Therefore, it's much too early to talk about the numbers for the turnout.
Chairman.
Yeah. Journalists.
There's a question about journalists.
Well, thank you very much. Jonathan is talking about safety of journalists that are out there. As you are very much aware, the union has a situation room that is fully operational, and as at this moment, we have not received any reports about any form of intimidation or harassment of any journalists out there. Apparently because of the increased engagement we had with the security agencies in the build-up to this election. But we are observing events. Thank you.
Does anybody want to say anything from you? No. Any more questions?
Thank you very much, sir.
Basically, I want to ask about the observation on disability-friendly polling units. What were your observations?
On what?
Sorry.
Disability-friendly polling units. We haven't received reports yet because we haven't. We haven't received reports yet about.
You want to answer them? Answer.
Okay, with regards to disability-friendly polling units, we're still monitoring that. We've asked monitors to look out for that, but we've received reports of people with physical disabilities or pregnant women or elderly people being given priority to vote. But with regards to the actual disability-friendly polling units, we're still receiving reports from our observers in the field. Thank you.
Okay. We thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in the afternoon when you give the second statement. We will give the second statement today. So thank you very much, and the statement will circulate at the end of this meeting. They will use. They will use.
Final report now. Not today. We don't have another.
So, no president. No.
Okay,
keep quiet.
All right, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen of the press, we have now come to a close for the preliminary briefing. Just to let you know that our final report will communicate the date and time to you. Thank you so much for coming.
Why are you looking intimidated? You and your gray hair.
Why are you so scared? You these two senior colleagues. You are making us.
We are youth.
I
take exception. We are youth, I'm an old man.
We are youth. One removed Moshe, the other left it there.
My brother, how you sometime?
Yes, I know.
You have become so scarce. You become visiting citizen.
All right, that was just an update from the CDD situation room there about the conduct of the elections. And one thing I actually heard that stuck to me was the issue of wheelchair-friendly polling units. From what you've been able to see, have our polling units been friendly to people with disabilities?
Yeah. There's been some polling units that has been friendly. I think the only thing we've not really seen is friendliness towards pregnant women and the aged.
I see.
Actually, that's not been. We've not really. For some of the polling units we've actually interacted with, that's not really been. They've not been priority to them. But for persons living with disability, yes, there's actually been that. So that way they can be encouraged to come out to vote. But I've not really heard of anyone. When you say person with disability, it's very ambiguous. An umbrella statement. So when you want to demystify it, I know that there's handrail, there's rail system for people using wheelchairs, and the rest of that, wheelchair access and all of that. But for Braille, that's the part I've not really heard anything about firsthand.
Okay.
But we're still hoping. Reports are still coming in. We're still observing. The process is still ongoing. Fortunately, some of the polling unit results are already coming in from our own observers. They're already snapping results and sharing it with us. Of course, we cannot distribute results. We are not INEC, so we're not going to actually go into that. But then we are hoping that the one thing, again, like I've actually said, is that I am grateful that there's been good turnout. Specifically, in one of the polling units in Yobe, I think about 62 registered voters. We had about 58 people who turned out. That is good. There's one of it in Borno, one polling unit in Borno. All of the people registered in that polling unit came. And they finished since 12:30. So now they were just waiting for 2:30 before they would start counting the votes, even though they know that everybody had actually come to vote. So that it's really, really good. It's looking really promising, and I can't really wait to start seeing the data churning in as soon as they start coming.
All right.
That's the most interesting part.
Well, we look forward to that as well. So we understand we have a caller on the line. That is Mustafa calling from Bauchi. Good afternoon, Mustafa. How are you doing?
Good afternoon.
All right. All right. Which part of Bauchi are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Azare.
Okay, from Azare. So how's the election process in Azare generally from what you have seen?
We started early. Yes, as I have started around 8:15.
Hello, Mustafa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So you said, so how has the voting process gone on in Azare? Did it start on time? Were election materials delivered on time?
Yes, election started on time. We started as early as 8 p.m. and we were able to run the vote smoothly. The turnout there is consistent, if I can say. There are not any issue. But the can go just 3 minutes to finish. It was an excellent process.
All right. So what's your general assessment of the entire process from beginning to end?
Yes, this is the first time I'm seeing experience out voting. The process is very excellent because the last time we got 2015, I think we were able to vote around midnight. But today I'm going to see the first process in the Anyway.
Thank you very much, Mustafa, for that update and that you're bringing us from Azare, and we hope this process is concluded smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mukhtar, we understand that you have other responsibility to catch. We practically had to pull Mukhtar out of the field. But because this is going to be on until a new president is confirmed, it will be important we let Mukhtar back into the field.
Of course.
So that he returns again somewhere in between this conversation and gives us some, serve us with some fresh and hot updates from the field. But before you go, the Situation Room from CDD said something that was critical, that what they have seen, it's a largely peaceful process, apart from few skirmishes here and there, that they have not seen violence in the proportion that would discredit the overall credibility or the overall election. Do you agree with that submission?
Yes, I do. I think I mentioned that earlier. Yeah, I do. It's supposed to because we're going to be observing the election, we did a lot of security training for this election, and the way they prepared us as if we were going for war. But of course, most of it has not really been necessary, and the projections have not really been as bad, which is a good thing. I think we are, like I said earlier, I think we're ushering ourselves into a new democracy, and how the results go, the transparency of it. Now, at this point, the transparency of counting the results. Now, we've seen that you cannot say, oh, they scattered ballot, there was intimidation, because we followed the process very religiously. Were there pockets of these issues here and there? Yes. But was it in large proportion? Not necessarily. You cannot even, if out of 100% of the entire process, you can't say that is, you can't say it's at 10%. So which is the good thing that we're actually very happy about.
Interesting. We, unfortunately, we have to let Mukhtar go now. The longer we keep him here, the more we jeopardize whatever he has to do out there. Thank you very much for showing up at short notice.
Thank you so much.
And for factoring us into whatever arrangement you have as part of your contribution to the Nigerian state.
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully, even in between, we can do Zoom and everything, and then
fantastic.
We can
you can be sure we'll do that.
All right.
All right. We will be getting back to the CDD Situation Room, but this time we will be talking with Shafiu Suleiman, who has some updates for us. To re-establish that connection and get those updates from Shafiu as quick as possible. We will take a quick break and bring you some live pictures from across the country on how people have turned out for this election.
Nigeria's 2023 general elections are just around the corner, and Trust TV is your trusted guide to the polls.
With live reports from polling stations, collation centers, and key locations across the country, you won't miss a moment of the action as we bring you comprehensive coverage and analysis with invited guests, including politicians, experts, and voters to join us in the studio for in-depth discussions throughout the day.
You will also have your say too. Call in, share your thoughts on social media, take part in our live polls as well as our question and answer sessions.
So join Nigeria Decides on Trust TV on Election Day starting at 8 a.m. for the most comprehensive and trustworthy coverage of the 2023 general election.
Actually, I came here around 9 o'clock.
Okay. So from that 9 o'clock, how long did it take you to cast your vote?
Actually, it didn't take me that long because people were here coordinating the lines, so everybody was there at the polling unit. So it didn't take me long actually.
Okay, so were there any problems encountered while you were here, either directly, a problem you encountered directly or you saw anybody encountering?
Okay, actually, like when I came here initially, that was in the morning, there was somebody that wanted to cause a problem here, but the security people here were able to checkmate everything, so everything is in order. Then I think initially the machine, Viva's machine, initially they were having issues, but they were able to rectify all the issues. So far everything is moving on smoothly here.
Bidi, don't forget it. Hold on, watch paradise. Don't forget me now. Allah one ile and bread.
Yes, ma'am.
Ìdìbò tí ń lọ ní lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ báyìí kí Ọlọ́run bá mi ojú òṣèṣe oore fún gbogbo wa kó rọrùn kásìkò kó dáa fún gbogbo wa kó rọ̀ àlọ́run
the INEC officials have even made the system easier for us. So they have made provisions for us in order for us to vote. So there's not an excuse. Everyone of us must come out and vote for our choice of candidates.
It's been peaceful. It's been very orderly. And the conduct of the officials of INEC is, highly, commendable. So I believe we're going to have a very free, fair, and credible election, if what I've seen here is something to go by.
It is quite early in the day, but what we have witnessed so far is quite encouraging. Right now, people are coming out to vote, and INEC officials came on time. They have been here before people even started turning out, making the arrangements, getting their materials put in place. And right now, we have a lot of people coming out to vote, and the process has started. So it is ongoing. People are voting peacefully. There hasn't been any report of altercation or disruption anywhere so far. We can say confidently that we are impressed with the process as it is currently going on.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Trust Television and it's Nigeria Decide 2023. We've been bringing you updates from around the country on developments around voters' conduct, the conduct of security officials, the voting pattern, turnout of voters, and we will continue to do this until the president is announced. And of course, I will bring you dates by dates around results that will be announced in polling units, leading to the epic moment.
Yeah, let's actually get into that. Let's actually get into that now.
You know, we understand that for some areas, in fact, the results have started to come in. But like we said, once we get concrete development around the INEC portal, you can be sure to be some of the, the first to know. Let's look at how these results have panned out. But by the way, our lines are still open for those who want to speak to us and give us updates from their various locations on how this election had gone and what their voting experience had been. Our lines are open. You can do well to phone in and share your perspective with us. The elections,
the results.
1999 to 2003. You know, we have seen all kinds of results from that period when Olusegun Obasanjo first emerged as the president. He's scored about 18,000 votes, or 62% of the vote at a time, against Olufalaye, who was his closest rival from AD or APP, who scored about 11 million votes. 18 and 11, you'll be talking about 29 million voters at a time in 2003. You know, it showed clearly right from time that we have had a substantial number of people interested in voting.
Yeah, definitely. We'll come back to that right now. We have a caller on the line. That is Okechukwu calling us from Owerri. Okechukwu, good afternoon.
From Okigwe, Okechukwu.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. What's your general assessment of the election around the Okigwe area?
We have been there since morning. Up to now, the INEC materials, everything, we have not seen anything. Up to now, and the crowd there, there are more than 100 people. So we are confused. We don't know what is wrong.
What polling unit exactly? What polling unit exactly is this in Okigwe?
005 as a co-keeper.
Okay, is it from your conversation with people around you and your family, does it appear to be the norm around Okigwe generally, or is just an isolated case of your own polling unit?
There is other places like that. As soon as they again, also close to the same place, we have the same similar issue. So I will say what I don't know, but I'm aware of these two places. Yes.
All right, so have you had any incidents of any violence or any incitement going on elsewhere apart from...
Actually, I'm not aware of that violence or that issue, but I know that up to now, the IMF materials, none of them is around.
Okay.
And we are tired, and we are more than 100 people there waiting for them to come.
Okay, have they been able to brief you on why you still have these delays and whether or not you will have the opportunity to cast your votes today? Is there been any...
We have tried our best to reach any IMF office or whatever, no way to find them. We went to other area, telling them that nobody is there. They say that we will come. And someone so far now.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sure the INEC officials are watching and they will swing into action with this report of yours. Thank you very much. It's 3:36 p.m.
It's quite interesting.
It's inconceivable that you don't have INEC officials in polling units where you have over 100 persons waiting. What do you think could possibly account for this kind of situation?
Well, it could be a number of things. I mean, like considering where the call came in from. I mean, like, it could be issues of logistics. It could be maybe security issues or something like that. But the worst part of the situation is not even not having the officials there. It's not knowing whether they will be there, whether they will be able to vote or not, whether if you can be able to vote, and it's not knowing that is one of the main issues right now. So I do hope that the INEC officials are actually listening and this polling unit can be rescued, so to speak.
We hope so that something can still happen between now and when this process closes. We now have John from Oyo. Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. What's the situation around your location? By the way, where in Oyo exactly are you calling from?
My situation here, as one report in Oyo, is very, very good. Everything is very peaceful. Don't have any catastrophe here.
Okay, so where are you calling? Are you calling from Oyo town or from Ibadan or Gbomosho? Where exactly?
Yeah.
You want to take that again, John? You are
Oh, it's Uyo, not Oyo?
Yeah.
All right.
Uyo. Okay, so what the development in Uyo you said again?
It's very peaceful.
Okay.
Yeah, very peaceful election. I will have any challenge in a different machine.
Okay. And there had not been any skirmishes around your location, no attack on facility or a voting unit around your place, right?
The only challenge we have early in the morning was the voting material was not arrived in time. So I thank God before 2 o'clock the voting had been completed in the game. Very successful.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much for that update, John from Uyo, and we look forward to hearing from you if you have anything else that you feel we should know. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you also.
All right. All right. Contrasting stories there coming in from different places. I mean, like we just heard a polling unit in Okigwe where voting has not even started. They have not even seen the officials and nor the materials. And we're hearing it from Uyo now that everything is going exactly. So I think generally, from what we've seen so far, it's mostly the main issue has been late voting, commencement of voting, arrival of the materials, and that's the problem.
Yeah, interesting. Late voting, but this was to be expected if you think of the fact that up till yesterday we were still contending with first custody.
Exactly.
We had cases of even some coppers protesting in close by Abuja that they had not received their stipend payments. So if there is a chance that any of these factors had come into play, then perhaps it may be responsible for. But to think that this has taken up to 3 p.m. and there's no word from the officials on what needs to be done is
one interesting thing that is we have not heard reports. We've not had so many reports of having the beavers actually failing and you know.
Yeah, I mean Mukhtar said it here before he left the set. Unlike when we first introduced the card readers. Remember, yes, even the sitting president had a problem.
Exactly, there were so many issues.
They practically had to reconfigure his set, you know, to be able to do that. But the visas are sort of fitted into our process seamlessly, to the point that it's beginning to look like we may not even need the voters card
anymore. Exactly.
All right, we would be going to Lagos now, where Mustafa is standing by. Good afternoon, Mustafa. Thank you. Can you please share with us what the situation has been around your location in Lagos? And by the way, where in Lagos are you talking to us from?
From Lagos, yeah.
Where exactly in Lagos, yeah? Okay, from Apapa. All right. Can you share with us the situation around Apapa?
Yes, exactly. We have catching up a boot here. There's no problem. But later in my pulling boot, some boys came and smashed the box.
Okay, so what about the entire process? How was the entire process in your own polling unit? I mean, like the accreditation process using the beaver.
The process was smooth. Everyone was good. But they came smoothly and took off the smash box to the box and get away.
So when did this incident happen? Was it after you people were done voting or before the process?
It was after the voting because many people have voted and we went to their houses. So there was the other officials were waiting for some other people to come up because the time is still not. They're still waiting to come and vote.
So what exactly did they take? Was it the voted the ballot boxes, or they also did away with the beavers?
No, the ballot box.
Just the ballot box.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Mustafa from Lagos.
Okay, thank you.
You would think that that incidences like this will not rear their ugly heads when it comes to election at this particular point in time.
Yeah, you know, to think that this is coming from Lagos is worrying because, well, Lagos may be big and congested, but it's in terms of size, it's actually a very small place, really very small. By implication, you would think that the security grip of the situation around there will be tighter, you know, to foster development like this. It's sad that we could get things from places no less like Apapa. I mean, Apapa used to be the center of activities in Lagos in the early 80s because of the presence of the maritime activities around that place. I mean, way before the Ikois of this world. So, I mean, in 2023, to be having this kind of incidents around Apapa is worrying.
Exactly, it is quite worrying. But the fact still remains. I mean, like with the beavers and how voting is taking place right now. Why will the snatching of these ballot boxes, will they really affect how these results are collated?
You would need the ballot boxes as practical or physical evidence for what had happened, even though you have those results, you have the accreditations on the beavers. And where that could affect is if they are taking the ballot boxes before actual counting, then it prevents counting because it is when the counting is done
that's when
that you then
who
impute
gets what
that result into the beavers and
all right. Well, right now we have BC calling from Akure. Good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. BC from Akure. All right, so we seem to have lost that caller. So we're talking about the correlation between the ballot boxes, the ballots themselves, and of course the beavers and how it's going to affect the results. So in a situation whereby results have already been counted, then does that mean when the ballots are now moot?
Well, if results have been counted and they have been inputted on the machine and transmitted, I'm not sure how that will play out, but at least there is a result. There is a digital version of that result that may have been signed on by the returning officer and the agents at the polling unit. So what you practically are done away with is a physical version, but a digital version had been captured and somewhat transmitted. But it then brings to the fore the arguments made by Mukhtar of how we can then get to the level where the moment you are accredited, you thumbprint on the electronic machine.
Exactly, and then your vote is automatically counted.
Yes. We understand that we now have JD from Niger. Good afternoon, JD.
My name is JD from Delta State.
Apologies, from Delta State, is that? Or Niger?
Niger State.
Niger State. Thank you very much. Can you share with us what your experience is around the elections today?
Yes, I'm from Niger State.
Thank you very much. That is taking years. Can you please share your experience with us?
The election here is peaceful.
Okay.
The election is peaceful.
Okay.
The INEC officers, the materials are done virtually. And everything was good. And there was no media at all. For that.
Okay.
Yes, everything was okay.
All right.
The election was still afraid. The materials came at the right time. So they are still voting. And then they are voted. And there are so
All right, so thank you very much for that update, and we appreciate you calling in. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're talking about...
On a ratio, we seem to be getting positive outcomes generally.
Exactly.
Except for one or two few places, it appears that indeed the Beavers has been a major game changer.
Yes, it has actually revolutionized the way we have done elections, and it's quite interesting how the face of elections have actually changed, and we've always talked about it. The credibility of the results will actually determine what happens afterwards.
Interesting. Yeah. Let us hear now from Nora, who is calling in from Katsina. Good afternoon, Nora. Good afternoon, Nora.
All right.
We will get back to Nora once we establish a cleaner contact with her. We are beginning to get, fillers from across the country, from places where we probably cannot reach with our paraphernalias. But I mean, Nigerians are part of the process. You make the process credible. You have a major stake in the process. It's important we hear from you, and others can hear from you as well on how these elections are played out in your various localities. It's such a big country. Even with the flight at 300 kilometers per hour, you would need 2 hours between Lagos and Maiduguri.
Exactly.
It's critical that we hear from you and you tell us exactly what had transpired in your place and how this whole process has played out.
Oh, yeah. All right, so we are having a caller from Cross River. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, please.
All right, Mary from Cross River. How is the process going on in your area, the election process? What is your general?
The process smooth.
Okay.
We got there at about 9:45 a.m. and accreditation was done. Both started. We are both accordingly. We are going accordingly.
Okay. Okay. Have you heard any reports?
Any department or is coming out willing to the place is calm.
Okay. Have you heard any reports of any skirmishes anywhere, of any rancor or anything like that? Any disruption or violence?
No, there's no violence. There's violence. Nothing.
Okay. How would you describe the general conduct of people around the polling unit where you voted? How did people conduct themselves generally?
Okay.
It appears.
People themselves is very, very much so. And
all right. Thank you very much, Mary from Cross River, for that update from your area. So just like we were saying, I mean, like generally we'll be getting positive reviews concerning the conduct of election, apart from one or two places that we've heard.
I think the interim verdict, if you like, from the CDD is a fair reflection of what we have seen around the country. There are over 160,000 polling units for these elections. This is not to undermine the areas where there have been one or two issues.
Exactly.
But when you take that as a percentage of the total number of places where these elections are taking place, it's only fair to say that what appears to be the first half of this election had gone.
Because that was what I was getting to. Because this is just the first half of it. Right. I mean, like the process, the voting itself, that is just a part of the election. I mean, like so when then we have the results, that is another part of it entirely.
That's right. I hear that a caller from Port Harcourt is back. Yes. So you were.
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me, ma'am?
BC from Akure.
BC from Akure.
BC from Akure.
Thank you very much, BC from Akure. Can you share with us what your observation has been?
Yes, the election is free and fair.
All right. Can you please move away from your TV screen so that we can hear you clearly? Okay. So, how has been the conduct of the election around your location?
The election is free and fair.
Okay. How has the process played out since morning?
People are cast their vote. There's no problem. There's no anything.
All right.
The process is okay.
Okay. And the materials arrived in good time?
Yes, it's arrived in a good time.
Okay. Is the voting still open? This is 3:50.
No, people are casting their vote, no problem.
All right. Thank you.
I'm not in my house.
Oh, interesting. Thank you very much for that update.
Okay.
Thank you. We can't appreciate you enough. We have gone from Niger to Port Harcourt to Lagos to Akure to Oyo to Uyo.
Exactly.
And it sort of speaks, when you do a quick bit, it sort of gives you a general perception, if you like, of how, like we said, we were saying before that call came in, of how what appears to be the first half of this process
of the election,
had gone. We hope that the countings go, because tensions begin. This is the moment of fear.
When results starts coming in, that is when we get to know the real tone of the election.
That's right.
Exactly, because that is when people start getting agitated and the rest of it. So we hope that doesn't happen this time around, and we believe that the introduction of the BVAS might actually make the results generally acceptable, so that we cannot have all these problems of post-election.
Absolutely. Violence. We would take Samson from Taraba. Good afternoon, Samson.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. Where from Taraba are you calling?
I'm calling from Wukari local government.
Oh, nice. We had earlier spoken to somebody from Wukari, but it would be nice to hear what. Can you please come again? What's your general observation of the process?
Well, in the Wukari local government, the election some of places are very peaceful. But in my polling unit, we have 5 polling units, but we have no any workers there. No any signs of ballot paper to take care of the workers. So we are there stranded. Nothing.
No voters or no INEC officials. What exactly are you saying?
No INEC officials. No INEC officials. Nothing like it.
Okay, so for the other polling units where you have INEC officials, have they spoken to you as to why you don't have anybody around yours?
So what I'm saying is we have almost 5 bodies at a polling unit, but there's no workers there.
Okay. But how many polling units in total do you have around there?
Up to now, the people are still trying, they are waiting for the INEC officials to come.
Okay.
Now?
Okay, thank you very much for that update.
It's okay.
And I'm sure that INEC is listening.
It's okay, sir.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's the second of such report we are getting of INEC officials not being present in polling units, and that is, we just hope the situation can be rescued.
That's right.
And of course, time is definitely running out.
That's right. By and large, this were expected. How this whole lapses would then be resolved is what is yet to be seen.
Exactly.
In previous election, we have seen that INEC had extended voting, even late into the night.
Exactly.
For some areas where for reasons beyond their control, which could range from logistics to maybe insecurity, they were unable to show up.
Yeah, so I hope something like this can be made for these polling units that
That's
are
right.
yet to start voting.
That's right.
All right, it's Nigeria Decides right here on Trust TV, giving you live coverage of the elections as they unfold around the country. Coverage continues, and of course, Nigeria Decides continues, and we'll take a little bit of a hiatus to take a breath, and we'll return at top of the hour, 5 p.m. actually, so that we can be able to give you the best of the coverage of the election. So stand by for the news update at 4.